Well, okay, let's talk about this because Jesus tap dancing Christ, even a week on, I'm still steaming about the Karrion Kross call-up. We'll get into it in more detail deeper into the list. Spoiler, it's number one because of course it is, but God, WWE is such a backwards company sometimes. It is quite literally backwards to see stars see their stock rise when they go back to the developmental brand. It's so backwards to feel sorry for people leaving developmental and venturing to the land where the big bucks are made because we're afraid that their drawing power will be diminished, and it's backwards because the company have occasionally demonstrated that they actually really know how to do this right. It's a 5 worst list and also a 5 best list because sometimes WWE have proven they know exactly how to create new stars in a single night. Oh boy, this was a frustrating list to make, but here goes nothing. To be clear, this isn't a list about long-term call-ups, seeing NXT stars like Asuka slowly diminished over time on the main roster. This is about main roster debuts, the first few weeks, heck, maybe even the first night. I'm Adam, hailing from PartsFUNknown, and here are the 5 worst and 5 best NXT main roster debuts. Which superstar do you think got the rawest deal when making their main roster debut? Let us know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe to PartsFUNknown as well if you haven't already. It's super easy to forget to do so, but honestly, doing so really helps us out a lot. Worst number 5, the Viking Raiders. Except that wasn't their name, was it? No, it wasn't. It really wasn't. Prior to signing with WWE, the men now known as Ivar and Eric were Hansen and Rowe, aka War Machine, which is a stupidly cool name, if a little provocative to Disney's lawyers. Easily the most terrifying faction in all of entertainment, Rhodey says hi. Perhaps understandably, their names in NXT were changed. They were still Hansen and Rowe, but now they were War Raiders, which is actually hard to say out loud than you think it is, but hey, it's still good. It's still good. They were undefeated, hugely dominant, put on tag classics with Black and Ricochet, for example. The main roster thought, cool, we'll have them, debuted them, not as War Machine, not as War Raiders, but as, pause for dread, the Viking Experience. It's still good, it's still good, it's gone, I know. F***ing Viking Experience. Ironically sounding like a ride at Disneyland, not even a good ride like an Epcot ride. And just like that, your dominant, undefeated former NXT tag champions are a Party City laughingstock. Good job. In a rare case of WWE backing down under scrutiny, their names were changed again, this time to the Viking Raiders, but the damage was done. Also, WWE then continued to call their finisher the Viking Experience, cause f*** us, that's why. Best number 5, Baron Corbin. Poor Baron Corbin. I actually think what they're doing with him now at the moment, divorced dad showing up to his ex-wife's wedding to her new partner and just eating a whole bunch of vol au vents and being sad, is pretty interesting. But hopes were once high for the lone wolf of NXT. At WrestleMania 32, comfortably one of the worst WrestleManias, let's not forget, Baza Korb showed up in the Andre the Giant Memorial Mid-Card Purgatory and then won the whole damn thing in a fairly pleasant shocker, finally dumping out Kane. The Andre Battle Royal might have lost a whole bunch of its shine the last few years, but hey, this one at least made the main card. That's got to count for something. And walking onto the main roster and in your very first match winning a giant trophy with a legend on it by eliminating another legend to what was actually a pretty damn sizable pop, that makes a hell of a statement. Worst number 4, The Ascension. I don't understand this one. I don't understand. So as hard as it is to believe if you've only seen the appropriately named wasteland that the Ascension occupied on the main roster, but in NXT, the Ascension was something. They ruled the NXT tag division as champions for an entire calendar year and got over as a roughneck clubbing pair of German-tinged uber bastards. They debuted on Raw in December 2014. That was decent enough. They beat Miz and Mizdow in fairly short order, but then WWE made a baffling left turn with how they presented them. On only their second week on the main roster, Ascension started directly comparing themselves to other face paint tag team legends, Demolition and the Road Warriors, which first of all is weird because the Road Warriors were called Legion of Doom in WWE, but hey ho. And then commentary, particularly JBL, went on and on about how the Ascension were a bin bag of shit when compared to either legend team, mocking them for only beating jobbers and generally doing their best to bury them as hard as possible. Why? Why, you bastards? The angle paid off a few weeks later with Ascension being humiliated by a bunch of legends, including JBL and excluding Demolition and Road Warriors, to an annoying amount of crowd response, and honestly ruining an NXT tag team long term for a single nostalgic segment. WWE, you are insane. Best number 4, Paige. Let it never be forgotten that the women's revolution in WWE didn't begin with the 4 horsewomen. It began with Emma, and it began with missed every single day Auntie D, the motherfucking Paige. And hell, for a time it seemed like WWE knew exactly the star it had in its hands, because she debuted on the main roster in one of the best NXT call-ups ever. In 2014, the night after WrestleMania 30, which saw AJ Lee retain her Divas Championship in just a terrible thresh of slaps, hair pulling, and reality TV stars, the Black Widow took to Raw to gloat. Paige appeared, was given a match for the championship, and won it to a thunderous ovation, and one of the best "I've just won a match" facial reactions of all time. Instant megastar, and pretty much the blueprint for future NXT call-ups. Wait until you're in front of the smartest, most hardcore crowd of the year, debut someone they know, love, and respect, and have them make an immediate impact. After a rather bleak showcase of the division the previous night, WWE electrified their women's roster almost in an instant. Shame Emma didn't get the same treatment, of course. Like, it wasn't awful, but you remember Emma's debut? She was a lady in the crowd with a sign. Sorry, Emma. Worst number 3, Charlotte. No, we're not talking about the July 13th episode of Raw 2015 when Charlotte, Sasha, and Becky Lynch all made waves in the wrestling industry by being called up on the same night by Stephanie McMahon, a god that created women in her own image. Thanks, Steph, for everything. No, we're talking about the secret main roster debut of Charlotte that WWE would be very happy if you please forgot about. On December 8th, 2014, Charlotte strolled onto Raw wearing her NXT Women's Championship, no less, received a goddamn video package about how great she was, got an on-screen graphic hyping her title defense against Sasha Banks at TakeOver Our Revolution in 3 days' time before wrestling to Natalya and losing in 3 minutes. What? WWE, you explicitly framed this match as an advert for NXT TakeOver, the NXT Women's Championship, and why wouldn't you have the champion literally wearing the belt to the ring? Why would you have her lose? It doesn't make any sense. Natalya wasn't even feuding with anyone. Best number 3, Finn Balor, and talk about an instant megastar. 2015 was the year that NXT really broke through as a brand. The first arena takeover at TakeOver Brooklyn, the historic Banks versus Bayley feud, the debut of 3/4 of the Horsewomen being explicitly framed as a rescue mission for the main roster women's division. And as that year, 2015, rumbled on, Finn Balor was the flagship star of NXT, the NXT champion, the face that launched 1,000 weird hats made of belts. When Balor was finally called up to the main roster in 2016, they heralded it like the coming of Galactus and just doubled down on him every single week. Like, yeah, you can do that. Debut a star, tell us they're good, and have them prove it. It works. On the July 19th episode of SmackDown, the very first SmackDown Live in the much-hyped WWE draft, Raw picked Finn Balor as their third choice, above John Cena, above Roman Reigns, above Brock Lesnar. Check out the big dick on Finn. The very next week on Raw, Finn debuted to a huge ovation. The next week after that, he wrestled 2 matches, including beating Roman Reigns clean to become a #1 contender to the Universal Championship, which he won a few weeks later at SummerSlam. Talk about faith in a new star. Unbelievable stuff. The wheels came off following a heartbreakingly timed injury, but it is still a call-up for the ages. Worst number 2, Dominik Dijakovic, Mercedes Martinez, Shane Thorne, and Mia Yim. I mean, thanks for the hard work, everyone. Cheers for building your name brand in NXT after hard-hitting match after hard-hitting match after one of the best matches of the goddamn year with Keith Lee at TakeOver. Really appreciate it. Anyway, pop this mask on. Have we got some juicy new names for you? You can make a serious case for Retribution being the worst WWE faction of all time. You really could. They accomplished nothing, didn't even get a pay-per-view main card match as a unit, and half of them are still lumbered with those stupid fucking names. Dijakovic had one of the best feuds in NXT history with Keith Lee. Who, says WWE? All I see is T-Bar. Mercedes Martinez had wonderful matches with Rhea Ripley. Sorry, that's retaliation to you. Mia Yim had some awesome street fights with Candice LeRae, ladder matches with Io Shirai. Turns out she was in for a reckoning. Shane Thorne became Slapjack, Dio Madden became Mace, and everything was so uniquely terrible that half of the faction has fled in shame back to NXT, where we're all desperately trying to pretend it never happened. And the fact they didn't even get to use their real names has become almost a blessing. Poor Dominik. Poor Dominik. Someone save him. Best number 2, Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, and Dean Ambrose. Now that is how you debut a faction, boys. Use the NXT names, use that recognition to say, oh damn, we should be worried about these guys, have them show up at an important time like the main event of Survivor Series 2012, and have them do something important so that the people have questions. They're like the first proper NXT call-ups. They wrote the book on how to graduate from down there to up here, and WWE showed they knew how to fucking book them. Make them look cool. Okay, maybe not the turtlenecks, but they disappeared after night one. Give them something they want, justice, then have them win all the time. Their first pay-per-view, TLC 2012, they won. The next pay-per-view, they beat up The Rock. After that, they beat up a team with John Cena in it. They won at WrestleMania. Like, that's it. You've made us care. You've given us a reason to look forward to seeing these guys week on week. Sure, the success of the Shield is more down to WWE being able to hold their nerve and book them long term, but when you name more impactful NXT main roster debuts, this is right up there at the top. Maybe not quite at the top, but we'll get to that later, because oh no, we have to talk about worst number one, Karrion Kross. Maybe it feels too soon for this to be number one. Maybe Kross will recover and become better than Retribution. Hell, he almost definitely will, but I couldn't not put it at number one because it's just so baffling. The idea that WWE would do this to a brand that they own. You realize you own NXT, WWE. They make money for you. It's mind-boggling. Karrion Kross, a man with a killer manager, a killer entrant, and an undefeated streak, lost all three on the same fucking night, being rolled up illegally by not at all protected Jeff Hardy in 1 minute and 40 seconds. Look, before you say it, I get it. It could be the start of a story. It could result in Karrion Kross going on a murderous rampage through Raw like the next Braun Strowman. Worked out great for him, huh? But it's a fucking insult, not just to Kross, but to all the people who couldn't beat Kross, to Balor, Gargano, Dunn, Lee, because this guy is the top of the NXT mountain. He wore their belt to the ring. He almost burst into tears after being beaten by a 43-year-old who, in his last few televised matches, has been beaten by AJ Styles, Sheamus, The Miz, John Morrison, and fucking Veer on Main Event. The idea that months of booking, of hype, of packaging, of hard work can be written away with the stroke of a booker's pencil is so terrifying, unnecessary, and especially cruel when you compare it with best number one, Kevin Owens. The Shield debuted and beat people, absolutely, but they used the numbers game to do it, and most of the big names they beat weren't the one who ended up eating the pin in whatever six-man tag they featured in. The Shield didn't pin John Cena, but Kevin Owens sure as hell did. On the May 18th episode of Raw in 2015, Kevin Owens strolled onto the main roster carrying the NXT Championship, beat up John Cena, stamped on his US title, and held his beauty loud and proud above his head. Talk about giving people at home a reason to tune into the black and gold. 2 weeks later, at Elimination Chamber 2015, Kevin Owens fought John Cena, the biggest name in the entire industry at the time, wrestled a 20-minute match, and beat him clean. His first match on the main roster, and Kevin Owens powerbombed the US champion and pinned him. But not just that, Kevin Owens pinned John Cena. But not just that, the NXT champion pinned John Cena. Because that's what NXT should be, a proving ground, a place where ambition, dedication, and character work pays off by giving you a name, a context, a presence, so that when you burst onto the main roster, you're ready to kill Owens, kill. And more than that, the main roster fans should feel lucky that they get to see you, instead of, well, yeah. And that's our list. What are your favourite and least favourite NXT main roster debuts? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and share this video around if you enjoyed it. And make sure, again, you subscribe to PartsFUNknown for more silly wrestling content. Jam that jam.